My name is Yeriazarian. I am a software whisperer, which is a title I gave myself, if you couldn't tell. It is because I end up talking with people and coaching, consulting, and just kind of ended up being one of the situations where it's like they say something's broken, and then I walk in and I just kind of whisper a little bit to the laptop, and something happens. So it just kind of stuck. So that became my thing. I'm in Houston, born, schooled, work, Houston, hanging out there. Had a little career at Baker Hughes, doing oil and gas, doing a bunch of stuff. Worked for Headspring for a bit. We got rolled into Accenture, and here I am doing bigger and crazier things. I'm a people person. I'm good with people, and I'm a professional imposter because every time I go into a project, it is that first time I'm seeing any of this stuff. Oh, this is recorded too. This is great. Perfect. First time I'm knowing what any of that stuff is. And so it's just trying to figure out what am I doing here? How am I going to do this? Where am I going to do this? Why am I going to do this? And be kind and work hard in the process. So that's a little bit about me. This presentation came out of two things. One, it came out of like I use Teams, all my stuff for work because work requires it. But I was interested because there's so much extensibility in it, and I was curious how much extensible this actually was. And then the second thing this came out of was there was a Microsoft was doing a season of AI, and they had promised free stuff for people who do these types of presentations. And I was like, all right, they ran out of free stuff in like hour three, but I still committed to do it. So I'm going to do it anyway. But this is actually kind of fun. And I
I
was
do
interested
remember
in
that. I had that
how,
same experience.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the real interest is, there's a lot of Gen AI stuff going on. All the Python people are having so much fun. And I said, you know what? .NET developers, we know this stuff too. We got this, right? Um, and so I wanted to do a talk where we talk through like what does the ecosystem look like? What is like a .NET application look like in Teams? And then how does AI get tied into it? And it came with some cool stuff. So some of these slides are from Microsoft, and I'm going to talk over them a bit. And then I'll get into demo mode. And just as a little of a spoiler, things did not work out the way that the demos said they should. So we get to examine a little bit of the plane crash here, and we're gonna go frame by frame, and I'll show you how the stuff fits together, what some of the pieces are, some of the weird stuff I saw, and it'll all be fixed in .NET 9, I'm sure. So we'll see how that goes. So as I go through this, it's a small group, so I like to be interactive. So if you want to jump in, ask questions, you want me to focus on something, hey, that was a bit too fast, hey, this is a little too small, um, just jump in and like yell at me, okay? If you're on camera and you start waving sporadically, then I'll know to also pay attention. Oh, there's the raise hand features in there on there. You get my attention somehow. I won't be able to see the chat, so if someone wants to like yell when something's interesting on the chat, then I can jump in on that as well. Okay. All right. So Microsoft loves to call everything Copilot. You can have a GitHub Copilot. You can have a Microsoft 365 Copilot. I've got that at work. That's actually quite interesting. I made it do some fun stuff. The real neat thing, actually, the killer app, I think, for Microsoft Copilot, when you have it in your 365 tenant, is that you can ask it to find stuff and summarize things on Teams that happened across chats and groups and things like that, because it has access to everything you have access to. So instead of trying to find what you're looking for, you can say, what was the last thing that so and so told me to do? And it'll go and it'll find that conversation. It'll say, this is what they asked you to do. And here's the link to the chat where they asked you to do it. So that to me is that's the killer app right there. Like we don't have to do anything else. It helps me figure that out. It's like, what am I supposed to do here? But what's really neat is that so Copilot has like three kind of extensibility bits. So you can do connectors and connect Copilot to your business knowledge. You can do actions and skills where you can make it do fun things. And then you can build your own copilots that are using all the building blocks and pieces that they have from OpenAI and the Gen AI libraries and other things that are being built so that you build your own custom experiences. And we're going to really focus on that because building a Teams AI bot is really about creating that new user experience with that kind of custom code bit. So what does that look like? We have large language model, the LLM. For anyone that has been under a digital rock for the past 2 years, LLM is a large language model. It's basically a textual prediction machine that simulates a person as best it can. What's really powerful about this is that it gives you this language, this conversational baseline that you had to build through other means before. So those of us that were head springing before know about our friendly neighborhood bot that was on our Slack channels. And I mean, going through that, it was just kind of like real regex magic to figure out. So I built an extension that would, whenever a particular person mentioned that timesheets were due, that it would pick a random meme from a list of things, right? But it was literally like looking for the phrase because they would put the same phrase every time, like submit your time, damn it. And so whenever that came in, then I knew that, okay, now I get to match. But what's neat is that with the AI, with the large language models, you can be a little bit more flexible in how you respond to languages and in intent and different things. And so it gives you a lot more subtlety. It gives you a lot more nuance that you can bring to the thing, but it also brings a lot more chaos because the large language models, while they are a simulation of language, they are also chaotic systems. Then we can apply that. There we go. Got it. So building on top of that base, and so the cool thing is those are available through Azure OpenAI. They're available through a ton of different means and other services all over the place. There are big models, there are small models. You can kind of pick. One of the great strategies is to take one of those and figure out which one's going to make the best fit for you, which one's going to get you the best responses, going to cost the least, and is going to fit the best in your situation. So ton of choices there. So that's fluid. On top of that, Teams has built an AI library. So Microsoft's built an AI library and a bot framework. And the bot framework can do not just AI stuff, but all the different things that you want to do automated in Teams. And the AI library gives you accelerators that say, okay, let's pull all of the .NET AI primitives for the .NET SDK anyway. Pull the .NET AI primitives, the libraries that we want to use together, and try to make a golden path, a happy path for you to try to do this stuff, to make AI stuff in Teams work. And then on top of that is our glorious leader Teams that does all the Teamsy stuff. So as we're going through, I guess I should have really talked about that this way, but hey, why not? So thinking about the large language model, there's orchestrators, foundational models, there's data, there's other things you're connecting to it. The Teams AI and the bot framework give you the conversation stuff, the actions, the cards, all the different interactions you want to do in the user experience. Not quite the user experience, but I guess the fundamentals of that. And then Teams gives you the UX. Like you can see the cool thing about Teams, honestly, that I think they do really well is that the app experience is quite good. The browser experience is quite good. The desktop experience, they're all the same. So if you're on the go and you need to like do a Teams thing, it works just the same on the phone as it does on your desktop, and it works reasonably well. I actually would argue that before Teams version 2, the phone version was way better than the desktop version. So I tried to do more stuff on the phone, which was, varying levels of success there, but tablet would work too. Okay. So, and then there's all their language support, of course. So they have .NET, JavaScript, and Python, the big three that they support for a lot of these frameworks and pieces. So with the Teams AI library, you can have the bots that are conversational copilots. So instead of just having a bot that listens for a regex, tries to parse it, and then gives a canned response, you can actually have conversational bots that look at the history of your conversation and the chat that you're having, or whatever context window you have. You can have it look at files that you've attached to that conversation. You could add it, whatever context you want to give it to give it a more complete picture, then it gives you a lot more power. Now, of course, you got to figure out how to do all that, and have the resources to run it through the large language model, to do the AI stuff to it, but the capabilities there. So apps can also register skills where you can have it perform actions for you. Like, so for example, if you wanted to have something tied into your DevOps process for a particular project, you can have it interact with your Jira system or interact with your Azure DevOps or GitHub Actions or whatever systems you've got running through API connections. And you can give it some vague commands and say when someone says something about, hey, build the thing, then ask them first, do they want to build this thing? And then give them a yes or no card and then make them pick yes or no, for example. So you can take the natural language and have that part of that discussion. And a lot of that comes from that large language model capability that's there. This makes it where you don't have to be really, really specific to interact with people or interact with a bot. And it gives the bot some attitude. So you can give the bot some notes and say, you know what, you will only speak in Shakespearean sonnets, and make the bot do that for you. And so every time you're asking it to do stuff for you, it's going to reply back as best it can with Shakespearean sonnets. And if you call it out and say that's not a sonnet, they'll say, oh, sorry, my bad. I was trying to pull a fast one on you. Here's a sonnet instead. So neat stuff there. Conversational contextual. So this is a little bit of more of the same. So it really shows kind of how that piece is. So the bot will make a task, then the copilot will do a thing, go to the LLM, it could go to some data, and then give you a response. And you can grow this to a lot of different ways if you want to. All right, so let's do a little demo. So so Microsoft has a demo for this, and I did my best to go through it, and it worked about 80%. And I'm not sure why it's broken, but I'd like to show you anyway, because it's actually fun to talk about this stuff to see, because it helps us to talk through like what is actually in this Teams AI toolkit. And there's a lot of neat libraries that are part of it. And then two, it's going to give us a picture of a few things that maybe you're not usually going to see. And so we'll jump into that. So step one is that, let me make sure I pull up the right window here. You'll see a browser window going to the Office portal. If you don't see it, does everyone see that? Okay, no one's complaining. So I assume that's a yes. So I'm going to go into, I have an Office tenant on the side that I use for personal stuff. Ooh, low system resources. Yeah, whatever. And what I want to do is I want to show you a little bit of what happens. So the first thing we have to do is Teams, when you have it set up in an Office profile, it has a ton of administrative stuff that you can do to it. And I wanted to go pop into this real quick and show you some of these screens that you may not usually see. So what we have is we've got a Teams console here. And this lets you control all the little things. Like you can control which apps go in, you can put users into groups, you can set up policies, you can turn on different features, ton of cool stuff. There's a particular feature we want to do first, which is I want to allow certain people to upload custom apps. And this will allow us to have a development loop, as well as give us the ability to upload custom apps for our personal purpose, but also it goes through an approval. So administrators have to approve it before it goes broadly to the company. So there's a little bit of sanity there. So what we'll do is we'll go to Teams apps, which is not, well, it's an okay place to put it. We'll go set up policies. And of course, the Microsoft guidance in classic Microsoft style will tell you go to the global and turn it on for everyone, which is not what you should do. So instead, you create a custom policy and you put in the settings there instead, because that's what we do. So what we do is we want to have a little thing here called upload custom apps. So this will allow you to sideload applications into Teams. You can be, excuse me, you can be specific about which ones that are allowed, but you can just say, go do everything. And then you have to now apply that. So we'll go back to policies and we'll go to group policy assignment. So you create the policy and then you assign the policy. And then we assign it to this group here, corporate. This is my administrator group. And I want to add it to that. And there are some tricky bits there. So the super tricky bit is that even though my org here has 2 people in it, it still takes 24 hours to apply the policy. So there's a time element here, which is why I pre-did this, because otherwise it would be a very short presentation and we would just skip ahead. But what happens then is that lets us sideload, and that's going to be the first key thing. Then what we want to do is we want to make some Azure resources before we go. And so let's create a few things. And I will, let's see, we're 20 minutes. Yeah. I will go ahead and point to the things I've already created, and we'll leave it at that. But I can be specific about that. So in Azure, we will create three things. We will create a Azure OpenAI workspace. And what's tricky here is that between the AI stuff, some of them are only available in certain regions. So the OpenAI workspace is available in South Central US, but not Central US. And the AI search service that I wanted to run is only available in Central US, but not South Central US. So these things are at least geographically nearby each other, but I was trying to find the central line where they all were, and I didn't do the legwork of figuring out like which region I should actually pick. So there's probably a better one. It's probably some weird one like East US 2, where everything is like in the same place. And then I'll also create a storage account. Just a regular plain storage account using the storage v2. This one, I didn't need anything special. And of course, I'm doing all this in like developer mode, which is everything has public interfaces. We're not on private networks. Do not do this in your corporate environments, please and thank you. But this is the only way that this is going to kind of initially function in this setup without doing a ton of virtual networking. So it doesn't even need hierarchical namespace. It's really just to store some blobs of data that we put in there. So just a regular storage v2, locally redundant storage. Don't break the bank on this one. For the search service, we have, I think we had to do like the second tier because I want to use vector search. And so I can show you a little bit of what that looks like. Let's go back a step here. So if I'm going to create a search, so in a real environment, I would do all this through infrastructure as code. But I still have to build it normally once to figure out what the settings are that I really need. So I would do it through the portal once just to kind of get everything warmed up, figure out what I need, and then go and reverse engineer it back into what I really want. So I say search. And I want to search for Azure services only. So I'll do Azure AI search. Create one of those. So AI search was previously known as Azure Cognitive Search. This is what gives you vector search. It gives you a lot of different things that's there. So if we look at the regions, for US regions, Central, East US, East US 2, North Central. Of course, now, I think when I picked this before, okay, now they have South Central. When I picked it before, it was like, we have too much, it's too crowded, so they wouldn't let me put it there. Or am I mixing them up? Well, anyway, so we'll pick one, pricing tier. We can go down a spec to basic, because I don't need any of this nonsense. But if I go to free, then I can't do I don't have enough room for the vector stuff, because I was going to put like 30 megabytes of PDFs in there. And so I need 5 gigs. It's not terrible. So I'll pick basic. And then I'll go into scale. We'll pick everything at the lowest level because we don't need a lot. Everything's going to be public because we're lazy. And then we're going to go and create it. Right. And in creating the OpenAI, it's similar thing. So if I go back in and I want to create OpenAI, OpenAI definitely has some crowdedness situations. So if I do one of these, then this one also doesn't have a lot of, so there's a little bit of collision of names here. Azure AI Services is not Azure OpenAI. All right, so again, if I'm looking at the different regions which are making it available, so now South Central is back. And so that's good from where it was before. I can pick the standard pricing. I can just pick a name. There's some goofy stuff here, like if you, on the workspace names, like they're not available for a certain amount of time. So if you're like creating, deleting, you may have to use a different name for that to be created. So you go through the steps, and it's actually quite simple. You can do the networks again, public networks, because we're lazy. And then we would just create it. That takes a little bit more time to create that one, so I'm not going to create it right away, but I'm just going to use the one that we have. So what I found was that, hey, the search service is actually now available in South Central instead of Central. I don't know if that'll make a difference, but they're still continental US. They're still geographically similar, so it's probably not going to be a problem. But in a real situation, I'd want them co-located because, actually, no, it doesn't matter because where the way this works is that the actual interface to the search is from your application, not from the OpenAI service. So this is the thing that's a little bit goofy in how this stuff we think it works versus how it really works. Your application will do the vector search and augment the result with the vector search. But the OpenAI service itself is just a machine that will give you the outputs of the large language model. So we have all the pieces there. And what we'll do now is we'll go into the OpenAI Studio, which is where we actually manipulate the stuff. This is where things get dicey and like how much of this is done through infrastructure automation and how much of it would be able to be done through, has to be done through some other like API means. I don't know the answer to that. So that's something to kind of be careful of is that some of this stuff may, some of this stuff may be through Bicep, you can deploy all the pieces, but some of it may be that you have to actually use the API to interface with the thing or like send commands to it or do other fun stuff. All right. I've got two models deployed. I've got GPT-3.5 Turbo and I've got text embedding. So what GPT-3.5 Turbo does is this gives us the language model. This lets us do all the language stuff we want to do. We have some minimal settings on this one just to make it work. If I look at the deployment flavor here, what I've done is 30,000 tokens per minute rate limit. I don't really need that much. There is a model version auto update. That's good deployment type standard, such as pay per call. I'm not doing enough for this to matter. So pay per call is the cheapest way to go about it. There's also a content filter. So it will do like some secure stuff. It'll do some abuse, anti-abuse stuff. It'll do some kind of things that are less savory stuff. And what's dynamic quota? Capacity. Okay. Dynamically increase your quota if things are necessary. Okay. Cool. So then that will create a URI. It'll create a key. And this will allow me to use a large language model within Azure. This will get tied to, it's just charged, using the standard one, it just charges per usage. So you don't have to pre-allocate compute or pre-allocate anything. It's just going to be based on your number of tokens that you're throwing at it. And so probably in whatever I've been doing, practicing this, it's probably going to be like $10, $15 maybe, depending, because I've been just doing a lot of testing and it's been breaking. So all that may take a little more time. It'll give you some cool stuff about like if you did something bad, no violations, that's good. No abuse, that's good. I haven't been very mean to it yet, even though it was not behaving as it should. So what does this look like? So once I deploy the model, I can now open up a chat window. So this chat window, let's make it a little bigger. Oh, there we go. Turn that off. Okay. So this chat window lets me interface with the model directly as if I was playing with it. So I'd say, this is my GPT-3.5 Turbo, and this is the model instructions. You're an AI assistant that helps people find information. And then we can like say stuff like, hi, where can I find cool.NET developers? And of course, you know, the answer is on this call, but that's, oh, okay, they got it. Number 3, tech communities. There you go. Hope this helps. What we really want to do is I want to say, okay, I have a list of people and I have their technical skills and I have them in a set of resumes that I collected from whatever. And I want to figure out who should I talk to? Like, who are my .NET people, right? Where are my people at? And that way I can, you know, say, okay, I'm having a conversation about some technical topic. I want to ask the bot to say, hey, who should I add to this conversation? And so the simple way to start that is say, okay, if I have a way that I can capture everyone's credentials and their skills, can I use that to have the bot look at my conversation and see what topics were being discussed, cross-reference that with the people and their skill sets, and then give me a list of names and say, oh, you should talk to so-and-so. The simple version of this is just ignoring the chat context and just say, hey, here's my message. Please tell me who knows this. But the Teams libraries and AI will give you the ability to look at chat history. You can add more logic to have it do a correlation and say, well, someone is already in the chat. So I'm not going to add them. I'm not going to say you need to add this person, but I'll say, okay, so-and-so already in the chat, so-and-so, add them, and then give you action buttons to say, bring them in. Right. So you can turn it into more of an interactive instruction using Teams. I wouldn't get that far, but I know that the capability exists. Let's talk just about the AI model. So what's funny is I haven't done any .NET work yet here. So this is just all of the setup. And then the AI stuff, the actual .NET stuff is a little bit, which is how all the AI stuff is already. Right. So even the Python people, most of the work is going to be having the model set up, choosing the right data sources, getting it all set, and then some sort of piece that pulls it all together. And that's your actual scripting code you're going to do. So let's add some data to this. And so you can add the data in a lot of different ways. So this playground here is basically just a chat client, as if you're running it on your local machine. And then what it's actually doing is it's going and it's sending calls to the AI model, and it's also going to go and look at the search source too. So we're going to do a little bit of fun stuff. What we'll do is we'll pick a data source. And so what I've already done in the AI search, one of the cool things you can do is you can upload files. So this is why I created my blob. I can upload it to a blob, reference to AI search, give the index a name, and let's call this Teams. Let's say this is resumes 02 because I already made an 01, and I want to add a vector search. And then I could pick the embedding model again for my set, text embedding. And so what it's going to do is it's going to say, all right, you're going to upload a bunch of files. I want to calculate the embeddings, and I want to put them into a vector search. So it'll save the files into blob storage. It will save the embeddings to the vector search. And so the embeddings, the way it's a hard thing to explain. So the main thing to think about embeddings is that you take the content you have, and it will calculate a bunch of relationships between words. So if you think of the large language model as a human language prediction machine, what you're doing is you're nudging it in a direction that says, when you see this person and you're talking about technical skill, .NET is one of those skills. When you see this person and you see a technical skill, and Java is one of those skills. And you see this person, it's a Python skill. And so it's starting to form these relationship chains so that when you're thinking of Java developers, you're suddenly thinking of this entire list of resumes and all the places where skill and Java tend to correlate, or skill and .NET tend to correlate. And it kind of figures it into the prediction machine, and a bunch of math happens, and it takes it into account. I don't know exactly how it all works. And it sometimes works well, and it sometimes doesn't. But I think it's important is the experimentation, because unless you're doing the deep research into AI, the hard thing is to really understand the math of how it works. But for us mere mortals, the thing to do is experiment. Play with it, try out different things, go to the playgrounds, run stuff locally, and read up on different ways to experiment and different ways to position things to make it work. So it's a little bit of trial and error, but also a lot of community and discussion. So every time that we talk about AI tools, like let's say GitHub Copilot, for example, we want to have people talk to each other about how they use it, because there's no real instruction manual. There's nothing that says, hey, here is the list of 500 things that GitHub Copilot can do for you. Someone's going to come up with number 501, 502, 503, just from using it in weird and different ways. So with these AI models, it's the same thing. With this work that we're doing too, it's something where you just have to experiment with it and put some mileage on it, and that's going to give you that exposure. So when we talk about data here, So we can come in and we can actually just drop files in, and it will upload them into Azure Blob Storage. It will turn them into a vector and will give me an index, which I already have. So cancel a lot of that. What we'll do instead is we'll reference the index we already have. So I'll say, go to my AI search. This is the one. I'm going to pull this index that I have here. I want to add a vector search. I want to reference my embedding model. And that's all I want to do. I'll go next. So what this is saying is that I have the AI search. The embeddings are using this text embedding ADA02. I want to do vector search. And here's the index where I put all my data. So this lets me kind of remap, because if you think about what I have to do is I have the embeddings I've already done, right? I've taken my list of PDFs and I've converted them into math. And then I'm talking to the bot with language. And so it has to then convert it to the same math so that it can see how things are correlated. So what we're doing is we're helping it to make that connection, to say, this is the math that I used before. So here's the math that I want you to use now so that you can see if these things are related or not. So search type, we'll just say vector, because we don't really want it to do semantic search or other stuff. We're just trying to do vector search at this point, because that's what we put in there. We're going to use API key. So in a real situation, in a corporate environment, you will be required to use managed identities for a lot of this stuff. In some environments. And so some of this stuff, what I found with a lot of the AI stuff in Azure, the managed identity stuff doesn't necessarily always work well. So you may have to get a lot of exceptions to get API keys. And so what API key will do is it will create an API key in your search that will let you, it'll go and find the key and use it. So as long as you have administrative rights to that resource, it'll just go ahead and pull the key and make the connection. If there's no key to use, it'll create a key for you. And then it says, that's what I'm going to do. What's what I'm going to do? I say, go, cool, go. Now, this hasn't created anything. What I'm doing here is I'm just trying to configure my client. This client is running strictly in the browser. And so now I'll ask it the same question. So start a new chat and I'll say, hi, where can I find cool .NET developers? And let's see what it says now. Now forget if that resume list had .NET developers. There we go. So now it's pulling names. So it found 5 names in the list. And then it's showing me 5 references that are to the PDFs, which are the resumes that I had posted. So if I pull this resume, let's see if this actually works. Yeah, it pulls it off to the side here. So this person worked at AdventureWorks, obviously .NET Shop. And then skill sets, languages, C#, .NET, SQL, so on and so forth. So this is kind of what it's pulling from the PDFs that I loaded. So if I pull, this was Isaac Talbot. And what I can do is, let me actually show you that just to prove to you that that's a real person. Let's see, this guy. And let's pop it up. All right, so this was the PDF. Oh, come on. There we go. Get down, over. Yeah. So this is the excuse me. So this is the PDF that I fed it, and so it took this, extracted all the text, and generated the output from it. No, I don't want to get a tour of Acrobat Reader. I know Acrobat Reader. So as you can tell, skill set, .NET, SQL, so on, Visual Studio, Git. And we could ask it anything. Like we could go in and say like other people that have experiences there. We could say who's located in, let's say, for example, we want to say who's located in London. Looking for .NET developers located in London. So now it's going to try to do, so it's rehashing what I said. And so it knows about locations, it knows about London. And so now I've found 2 people. So it picks the same person from before and also found another person, Archie, who's also in Manchester, close to London, the greater London area. And so this gives us that context. So this is actually pretty powerful now. I really just fed it a list of things. So if you have a a spreadsheet of skill sets that you maintain, then you upload it periodically into the system and have it draw those connections, then you could source this from a lot of different ways. Or if you have, let's say, you're in a consulting company and you generate one-pagers all the time and you do updates of them, take those one-pagers and push them in. Or if you already have a skill management system, then you can have a way to interface that data so that when you go into looking at people, you can have it cross-referenced with the skill management system as well. So this gives you a lot of flexibility. Now, again, none of this has anything to do with .NET Code yet. All we're doing is we're setting the stage for what the models are doing, what the data is doing. So it's AI at noon first, and then we'll do .NET at noon 45. Okay. So like I said, this doesn't actually create anything. It's really just running the resources. So if I go in and open my dev tools, and let's do a little fun look at my network trace. Network. Where are you, network? Come on, there you go. All right. So if I go in here, let's make this a little smaller, and let's go this, and I'll say, show me detail. Let's see. Show me .NET developers in Texas. So what we're excuse me. So we've got things going to completions. This is actually this is hard to see, but let's see. So this is actually going to my model itself. This is the endpoint for my GPT-35 Turbo model. And oh, so there's no .NET developer in Texas. This information is way out of date. But what we can see is that the payload I actually sent was going to your AI assistant. Where can I find cool .NET developers? It's showing like the different context of what discussion I'm doing. And then it's also got my data source, which is talking about Azure Search. So this is the information about the API key that I'm recording. That's okay. I'll delete these resources later. So it gives you the context of these pieces that are going to go in there. And then it should go to, oh, because it didn't find anything. Okay, so if I go back to London, show me the developers in London again. At some point, what we should see is a call out to the search. That's completions. That's still all right. It looks like it's doing. Looks like it's encapsulating some of that stuff. I thought I would see a call to the search, but it looks like it's doing it all behind the scenes. All right, not what I expected. That's cool. Because like on the .NET side, what I'm seeing is that it's actually, it's sending the same information, but it's not actually working. It's not pulling the data together. So let's see how that works real quick. Now we're going to go to Visual Studio. So Visual Studio, the way this all starts is that we will have Visual Studio. There is a template for Teams applications. So we'll just do a new project. And 90% of this is coming from the stuff. So we'll go ahead and search for a Teams app. So I'll just go type it in here for the performative part of it. Teams. So Microsoft Teams app. So this is in Visual Studio, there is a toolkit that you have to install to the Visual Studio installer. And it's called Teams Toolkit or Teams Application Support. Ooh, excuse me. And so it has the project template. It has a lot of fun options. So I'm going to call this Expertise Finder 02 because I already have an 01. And I'm going to just kind of let it do default, let it create. Okay. So now there's a lot of options now. So it can do a tab. You can create custom tabs in Teams. It can make a simple echo bot. This is going to use the bot framework just to like echo back stuff. What we want is basic AI chatbot. There's a few other things here, like you can have it connect to your data. You can have it connect, like have an agent-based approach. You can do chat notifications, chat commands. So there's a few other templates here that are interesting. I'll put a link to the team's AI samples. They have about 10 different samples of different ways in which you can use the AI framework. And they're all pretty simple to get through, but they're interesting to see like the different ways in which they approach it. So we'll do the basic AI chatbot. This will get us most of the way. We'll just start at 8. We'll use Azure OpenAI. And then now we got to pull some of our secrets in. So service key first. This is going to be the way when you create the workspace, there will be an API key that will show you how to interface with this whole environment. So what I do is I'll go to keys and endpoint. This is for my OpenAI. I'll pull that guy. And I'll go back to Visual Studio. Paste that in. Then OpenAI endpoint, which will be this one. This is where it's going to go for the API calls. And then deployment name, this is going to be the actual, like, where's my GPT piece, which is this, we go to deployments, then it will be the name of the deployment here that I created. It doesn't have to match the name of the model. It just, in this case, it does, because the default is it's going to create one that looks like it. And I'll go to, here again, pasta. Make sure there's no spaces. Okay, great. It'll do its thing. Lug. So what it's doing now is it's just going to generate the scaffold for it. The nice thing is when we add those 3 keys, it will update some files, and it sets it all up for local development. So the cool thing is for most of this, it's a pretty good story for local development where all the secrets are kept to the side and it's doing a good job, except when the demo comes to how we connect to the Azure AI search, which I was trying to find a better solution for, but I ran into something interesting, but I haven't been able to really like nail it down. So at some point I'll go through this again and try to turn it into something proper, probably. So what's interesting to see, oh, on disk space. Why? It's gonna be one of those days. All right. So what we see in the solution is there's 2 parts to it. So it creates a our kind of C# project, which is called it's a web application style thing. It's just a regular ASP.NET Core application. And then we have the Teams app. This is the kind of like, you can think of this as like the deployment package of how does it go in and submit your stuff to Teams. So if I put the preview here, it gives you a nice little helper README that says this is what you got to do next, which is also helpful. Let me see what the system resources problem is, because this is going. Am I actually running out of this space, or is it just messing? I got 10 gigs free. That's an eternity. Okay. So, side note, because this thing's being weird to me, I'm going to show you if you haven't heard of it, this tool is called PC Manager. This is a Microsoft tool that was created by Microsoft in China. And it is, you could think of it as an alternative to CCleaner, if you use CCleaner. And it does like much better cleanup of disk items and also like memory and some other stuff. And it doesn't try to sell you a vast antivirus, and it doesn't try to sell you some weird upcharge stuff. So highly recommend this one because it's super easy. It does all the things that it promises to do, and it cleans up most of the big stuff that you're gonna find. So while we're waiting for that to find things, I'll put this off to the side. So that is called Microsoft PC Manager. You can get it through the Windows Store, Microsoft Store, free, required stuff. All right. So it'll give you some hints here. And so what it'll do is it already filled this out for me for the development side because I filled it in the project template. And then what we have to do now is we have to do a few things. So I have my Office environment. I have my Teams policy set to allow me to do custom app upload. But now what I have to do is I have to have a way for, for me to upload an application to Office environment. I have to have a way for the Teams client to run and reference my application, but my application's actually running on my local machine. And so there's a thing called a tunnel we have to create that pulls all these pieces together. So what we'll do is we'll go over here to the place you expect it to be, which is under Start. And there is a Dev Tunnels section. And we'll say, okay, you can create a new tunnel. And we'll tie it to my account, which will be my whatever my Office account is. We'll give it a name. We will say this is a temporary tunnel, just for being used for Visual Studio. And we need to be public because we're not sure the credential that I'm logged in on my laptop is different from the credential that I use for Azure. And so right now we need to set it up as a public tunnel so that we can use it internally. So this gets a little bit weird. But if you have, like, if you're in a corporate environment and everything is the same, then it'll work. But if you're using like one of the things you can do is you can if you have Office, if you have Visual Studio subscription, you can request what's called an Office developer account. So what you do is you go to Office Developer 5. And so what you can do is it will create a custom tenant for you and create a developer subscription for you that is, I don't know if they purge it every once in a while, but basically it gives you an Office sandbox that has stuff in it. It has people, like fake names, it has fake data, it has a bunch of extra stuff in there so that if you're building on top of Office, then this gives you some sample data to work with and a tenant that you can't mess up. Or you can mess it up and then you can purge it and restart it. So if your work environment doesn't, or so if one, you don't have a personal enterprise Office license you're paying for, and your work environment is smart and doesn't give you the ability to screw up their environment, then you can use this as part of your Visual Studio benefit. So if you're on this, you can request this, and as part of your benefits that you get. And I think even if you're just a professional, and we're all professionals here, but if you're just a Visual Studio professional, then you also get this benefit. There may be some stipulations on like the amount of like the capacity of it, and they probably purge it periodically for you. But it's a great way to practice. Like if you're doing Teams development, if you're doing Office automation, if you want to play with a bunch of different things, this is a great way to do it. Just don't put anything important in there because it probably gets burned to the ground. All right. Expertise. And so we can create a tunnel this way. Like I said, I've already got a tunnel, so I'm just I should probably create a new one. Let's see if it'll let me use this one. Okay, they let me use that one. I had one created here. So there's a tunnels window here you can look at too, which gives you a list of the tunnels. And of course, it takes a little bit of sweet time. Let's see what my disk space is. I can only clean. Of course, it's my edge. Oh, it's my edge cache. What are they? Oh, did I access that web VM? Maybe that's what I did. Anyway, I'll purge that in a bit. I don't want to mess with it. Okay, so it gives you a list of tunnels eventually. And so this is basically if we look at the ports used here, then it creates a port. I can inspect the tunnel. And so it basically creates a custom URL for DevTunnels Microsoft. And this is the way that it allows us to use it. So you can see devtunnels.ms over here. I think this is what they used for like Visual Studio Live Share and some other stuff too. I'm not entirely sure. But here you can look at the tunnel, and so you can examine the traffic going around the tunnel, which is actually what I'll keep this up because I think I'm going to want that to see why things are broken. Okay. Close this. Close this. Now, next step. There are some package updates we can do. So because this template is only slightly old, of course, the NuGet packages are all completely out of date. Just by 0.2, so not terrible. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we are updating. This may be why things are broken, but I still want to make sure I use the latest version of stuff. So Teams AI goes up to 181. The bot integration goes up as well. I'll just go ahead and update all the things here. The other thing that we have is there's actually it's using an out-of-date Azure Identity package that we'll update as well. That. Oh, actually, it looks like something. Oh, good. So there's an update since the last time I did this. All right, almost there. Okay, so now I'm not going to change anything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make the bot work as it is. So I'm going to go into Teams app. I'm going to go to Teams toolkit, and there's an option called prepare app dependencies, which you're not going to see on your screen because it's off to my right side, but there's a link there that comes up. And so what it does is it says prepare application. So what this is going to do is it's going to it's going to do the registration and intro in Azure. It's going to create the bot resource. It's going to also bring some of those settings back into the local files here so that I have the ID of my application and intro. It also gives me like the bot secret that it creates for me. And it does a lot of that kind of setup. So this is only for setting up the local development story. And it's going to do some automation down here. So you only do this for your local development. For your normal like deployment, there's actually some cool folders here that have like bot registration, the bicep files for that. So it gives you the pieces you need to set up the bot in Azure and the other parameters and things you want to see. Okay. Now I have all the pieces in place. I should be able, so I have the tunnel. I have prepared the app dependencies. So now I should be able to just F5 and it's going to run no, this should work actually because I'm using just I'm not adding any of the data yet. Okay, Azure Identity has a known vulnerability. Yeah, we'll fix that. I think. All right, running. And so while that's running, there's not a lot of code here. So we'll do a quick walkthrough. Most of the magic happens in the program. Yes. Let's go bigger here and make the last side. And it's just a top level program CS. Builds a web client. Nothing surprising there. There's a lot of things that it's adding that it has to be there because the teams bot is looking for it and there's some pieces that it needs to have in place. So it adds some web client, HTTP client, has HTTP context. It adds the config options, so there's some secrets and things that come in, and then it will pop up a new window with. So this is where things get fun. If you're juggling edge profiles, you have to make sure that you have it set to open up the whatever profile you really want it to open up for the links. Otherwise, it will open up the wrong one. So when you try to run it, it will actually try to add this to your teams. So they'll say, hey, find your O2 local. So yeah, go ahead. And you can see I have a few other ones that I've been trying out. And then, so this will load the default. This is the default chat app. So, hi, tell me about yourself. There, gives me a little response. So this is just a regular stock GPT-3.5 Turbo. So now what I can do is I can go into, close this, and I can give it a little more context. This is where things get weird. There's a folder here called prompts. There's a folder called chat, and there's two configuration files. And this is what is giving you the context for the model. So here where I could say this is an AI chat that can chat with users. You answer everything in Shakespearean sonnets. Is that how you spell Shakespearean? Close enough. Use lots of emojis, please. Okay. Run this again. This is giving the language model its context, where it's going to go and click on. And I'm running out of time, and so we'll kind of give it a pause here and show this. Hi, tell me about yourself. I'll spell it wrong, and that's okay. Hail and well met, fair user of this chat. How dost thou fare on this fine day? Speak freely, for I am at thy service, and ready to converse in sonnets gay. There you go. So, not much .NET code. So .NET at 1:02 p.m. But
I'd say team .NET related anyway. So
.NET adjacent. So there's a lot of libraries. So the one to look at is if you're going to explore the Microsoft Teams AI, it calls out to a lot of the AI stuff. So some of the cool things, they have the Azure AI OpenAI, which has a lot of the OpenAI libraries and other pieces. There's a lot of stuff in this that you kind of start to just drill down and look at and see how it's put together. But it's what I found challenging is that there's documentation, but there's not documentation. And so you have to look at examples to really figure out how this stuff works. So you might need to contact an AI model to figure out how to use the AI model to make it work. But the C# stuff only works in Visual Studio so far. There is a VS Code Teams toolkit for Python and Node.js if you want to go that route instead. But the .NET stuff, all the tooling integration, only really works here. So I think that's all the time I got. Didn't get as far as I'd like, but I can stick around and take questions if y'all want to stick around.
say I wish the place I'm at right now used this on their teams.
You can create your own office tenant and do what you want to do.
Might actually be able to find stuff if they did.
They can also turn on Microsoft 365 and pay extra money to Microsoft, which is always
I'm
great.
sure they'll love
They don't mind at all.
they'll love that sell. Yeah.
Yeah. Pay me more money and we'll just increase your legal and magic features.
Probably let us use your data. Yeah.
But at least like this type of thing, you can kind of opt into the little bits and pieces and start to build applications around it. So the key thing Microsoft's trying to do is like, how many accelerators can I build around this stuff? How can I make it possible to build custom integrations? If you've done any, like if you explore even just the simple Teams development, they have a lot of the visualization stuff, like the cards. You can create the cards really easily with JSON. And then it has like, it gives you a lot of different interactions. You can have buttons and commands and other stuff. So there's a lot of play you can do. Like if you're not even going to touch AI, there's a ton of stuff that you can do in .NET in Teams to do development as well.
Cool. I don't see any questions in the chat. Nobody's raising their hand, so I'm gonna say, and it's 1:05, so I'm gonna say that's a wrap. So
You can always reach out to me. I'm at Garo Yeri on most of the places. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on GitHub. You can find me on some of the social stuff. But if you know me, then send me a message. But I'm always happy to talk about stuff.
awesome. Thank you, Garo, for presenting. Awesome presentation. Thank you, everyone who joined.